What if I told you that one of Jesus's 12 disciples traveled to India? Not a missionary, not a scholar, not someone inspired by Jesus. Someone who personally knew him, was at the Last Supper, touched his wounds, and almost nobody knows this even happened. For centuries, historians have told us this was merely a story, a myth. But I went into the evidence myself and I found exactly what they wanted to bury. 3 pieces of evidence. Each one shatters a lie history has spent centuries building. I'll save the best for last. But you're probably wondering, who is Thomas and why does he change the very fabric of what we know about India? Thomas, the disciple they coined Doubting Thomas. The history books remember him as a failure, the one who couldn't believe. What they never tell you is what happened next, because this same man went further than every single apostle who did believe. Right away, that name, Thomas, isn't even his real name. In Aramaic, it means the twin. In Greek, the same word is Didymus. His full name was Judas Thomas, the twin. Nobody has ever identified who his twin was. He is the only person in the 4 Gospels who refused to believe in the resurrection until he could physically touch the wounds himself. Jesus appears to the disciples after the resurrection. Thomas isn't there. The others tell him, and Thomas says, "I won't believe it. Not unless I put my fingers in the nail marks. Not unless I put my hand in his side." 8 days later, Jesus appears again, specifically for Thomas. Stop doubting and believe. That is the last time Thomas appears in the New Testament. After the resurrection, the disciples dispersed. By tradition, Peter went to Rome, Matthew to Ethiopia, Bartholomew to Armenia. According to a tradition consistent across the Catholic Church, the Eastern churches, and 6 million Christians in Kerala who have believed this for 2,000 years, Thomas went east, all the way east to India. But you're probably wondering, okay, so Thomas went to India, but how? The world in 52 AD wasn't exactly built for a man walking from Jerusalem to Kerala. That argument falls apart the moment you actually look at the Roman shipping records. The evidence was sitting there the entire time. By the 1st century AD, Roman merchants had already mapped the monsoon wind system of the Indian Ocean. If you left the Red Sea port of Berenice at the right time of the year, the southwest monsoon carried you directly to the Malabar coast of India in roughly 40 days. The Roman writer Pliny the Elder, writing around 77 AD, complained that Rome was hemorrhaging gold into India. Spices, silk, precious stones. The trade was so heavy, Rome was running into a deficit. And then the archaeologists started digging. Since 2007, archaeologists excavating Pattanam in Kerala, the site of the ancient port called Muziris, right where Thomas supposedly landed, have been pulling Roman trade goods out of the ground. Roman pottery, Mediterranean amphorae, coins. The port was there. It was active in the 1st century. A man from the Eastern Mediterranean could have been on one of those ships. Here's the question nobody is asking. If the route was open and the port was confirmed, what did Thomas leave behind that someone has spent 2,000 years trying to explain away? Here's what the textbooks skip entirely. Thomas didn't convert the poor. He didn't convert the desperate. The tradition says he converted Brahmin families, the highest caste in Indian society, families with everything to lose, status, privilege, social standing, and they still converted. Families named Pakalomatom, Sankarapuri, and Kali. Their descendants are still in Kerala today, still Christian after 2,000 years. And here's the detail that makes this historically credible. Thomas didn't arrive alone. He came in the company of a Jewish merchant named Abanes. He was embedded in an existing Jewish trade network from the moment he landed. Because when Thomas arrived in Kerala, there was already a Jewish community on the Malabar coast, the Cochin Jews, among the oldest Jewish diaspora communities in the world. Why does that matter? Read the book of Acts. Every city Paul enters, Thessalonica, Corinth, Ephesus, the first place he goes is the synagogue. The apostles always started with Jewish diaspora communities. If Thomas followed the same pattern, and there is no reason he would have done anything different, a Jewish settlement in Kerala is exactly where he would have started. The tradition confirms it. Thomas converted Jews, Brahmin families, and the local king. But here's the piece that the establishment has never been able to explain away. Because what I found next doesn't just challenge the myth, it buries it entirely. Everything I've told you so far, a determined skeptic could still explain away. Here is the piece that they can't. In 1498, a Portuguese explorer named Vasco da Gama became the first European to reach India by sea. When local officials asked his crew what they were looking for, the answer was specific: Christians and spices. He came knowing the stories, centuries of European legends about a lost Christian community somewhere in Asia. He was there to find them. In fact, when his fleet first set foot on Indian soil, da Gama was so desperate to find what he was looking for that he walked into a local temple, saw a golden statue, and just fell to his knees to pray. He thought it was the Virgin Mary, but it was actually the Hindu goddess Parvati. He still found Christians already there though, not a fringe group, an established, organized community with churches, bishops, and liturgy, a documented history going back as far as anyone in Kerala could even remember. Here's what nobody talks about. Vasco da Gama wasn't even the first outsider to find them. In 522 AD, nearly 1,000 years before da Gama arrived, an Egyptian merchant and traveler named Cosmas documented what he found on the Malabar coast: a church and a bishop anointed from Persia. 976 years before Vasco da Gama, 1,446 years of Christianity in India before European missionaries established a presence there. Now here is the detail they tried to erase. When the Portuguese arrived, they assumed these Christians were connected to Rome. They tried to force them into the Latin church. When the Kerala Christians resisted, the Portuguese did what people do when they want to rewrite history. They burned their books, the Syriac Bible, the version these Christians have been praying for over 1,000 years. The Portuguese burned it and called it heresy. The Kerala Christians still didn't switch to Latin. In 1653, they gathered at a church, lit candles, stood before a granite cross, and took a public oath. The crowd was so vast that not everyone could reach the cross. They tied ropes to it and held on from all directions. The combined weight caused the cross to physically bend, and that's why it's called the Cunan cross. Cunan means bent. They would never submit to the Portuguese church, not ever. Out of 200,000 Thomas Christians, only 400 stayed with the Portuguese. And when the Portuguese examined the language these Christians had been praying in, the language that survived every attempt to destroy it, it wasn't Latin, it was Syriac, the language family of Aramaic, the language Jesus and Thomas actually spoke, a language that has zero connection to any Western missionary tradition. No Western missionary could have planted this. There is no version of history where Portuguese missionaries arrived in India and left behind a community praying in the language of ancient Syria. These Christians weren't using Rome's language, they were using Thomas's language. And here is the question the history books simply do not ask. If Thomas didn't go to India, who did? Who traveled to Kerala, converted Brahmin families, left a community documented by an Egyptian traveler in 522 AD, that prayed in Aramaic when the Portuguese arrived in 1498, that resisted 150 years of colonial pressure and still refused to change their language, and then disappeared from the historical record without a single name? The history books want you to believe it was nobody, that it just happened. Thomas is not the extraordinary explanation. Thomas is the only explanation. And I bet you've been sitting through this video wondering how Thomas met his end. Well, it doesn't end well. If he did make it to India, he never left. The tradition says Thomas was eventually arrested after converting a local king's family. The king, a man named Mistaeus, ordered soldiers to take Thomas to a nearby hill. They killed him with a spear 72 AD. The hill is still called St. Thomas Mount today, outside what is now Chennai. His body was buried nearby. In the 16th century, the Portuguese built a cathedral over the claimed burial site, the San Tomé Cathedral Basilica, which still stands today. Archaeological work at the site has uncovered burial structures beneath the cathedral. Nobody has excavated what's down there. The structure is there, under a 500-year-old church on the coast of India, 2,000 years after Thomas left Jerusalem. The history books say don't ask. Well, I'm asking. The disciple who refused to believe without physical proof, the one who said, I need to touch it, I need to see it for myself. He crossed the Persian Gulf, the Indian Ocean, 5,000 kilometers from Jerusalem. The man who doubted most went furthest. 6 million people in Kerala still carry his name. The history books just never told you. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel grow. If you want to support the work that I'm doing and get access to exclusive content that I make, you can join YouTube members. The link is right below. Or if you want to just help me keep making these, you can buy me a coffee. The link is also in the description. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.